Welcome to Sagenheim. In the previous part of the Thidrekssaga, we heard about Hildibrand having arrived in Bern and having raised young Thidrek, their fight against Hilde and Grim, and how Thidrek obtained Nagelring and the helmet most wondrous. So here now, from the olden days. North of the mountains in Svava stands the city called Saegard. There ruled the powerful and beautiful and proud Brunhild, who was the fairest of women in both the southern and the northern lands. She had much wisdom, and the great deeds that were performed for her sake will not be soon forgotten. In a forest not far from there stood a large farm that belonged to Brunhild, and that was governed by a man named Studas. He was wise and a man of great physical accomplishments of many kinds. There were many good horses in this forest, and of all the horses there was one stud farm that was by far the best of all, and there was none like it, even if one were to search in all the countries. These horses were grey of color, or white or black, each of a single color. The horses in this stud farm were both large and handsome, swift as a flying bird, pliable to all kinds of training, and very well cared for. Studas was the best of all men at riding, and for teaching horses both tournament and walking gaits. Studas grew old, but he had a son who was named Studas like his father. He was 12 years old. His appearance was so. He had a broad face that was not long, a short nose that was not thick, a broad forehead, wide open black eyes. He had a very thick beard and a large head on a short, thick neck. His shoulders were broad. Under the arms he was so thick that he was almost an ell broad. His arms were short and exceedingly thick. He had thick hands, and he was short and moderately slender. His shoulders were square and his feet thick. All of his limbs were short, but he was nonetheless the strongest of men. His favorite pastimes were riding horses, going to tournaments, fencing, and wielding the crossbow or spear. He was grim and hard-minded, ambitious and very proud, so that he would serve no one, but rather hated most people. And there was in this country no one who was his equal in strength, in knighthood, or in disposition. He did not have many friends, and with those he had, he was stingy with money and with support, and for this reason he had lost his real name and was called Heimir. Because one particular dragon has that name, and he is more vicious than all the other dragons, and all other dragons are afraid of him if they come near his lair. For this reason, Studas took his name, so that he would be compared to the dragon, and for this reason the Varingja call him Heimir. He was given a horse from the best stud, a grey and the best and largest of horses. The elder Studas had trained him. His name was Rispa. One time, Heimir took his horse and his sword Blodgang, the best of all weapons, and he told his father that he wanted to ride away and that he didn't want to grow old in that forest. And I want to learn the customs of good men and thus gain honor. His father Studas answered, "If you don't want to remain here and be caretaker of this farm, where do you want to go?" Heimir answered, "I shall ride south over the mountains to the city called Bern. I have heard of a great prince there named Thidrek, and I want to test which of us will get the better part of a duel with weapons." Studas said, "Wise men have told me about Thidrek, and you would be very conceited if you intend to match yourself with him in any way. Go rather to another place if you wish to test yourself, because it is bad not to know one's limitations. Eagerness and self-deception have brought many to great shame." Heimir answered, "Either I shall be quickly killed, or I will be a greater man than Thidrek. I am 17 years old, and he is not yet all of 12. And what man would be so great that it would be conceited of me to wish to fight him alone?" With that, he sprang angrily onto his horse Rispa and rode away on a long journey on unknown paths. He did not let up until he arrived in Bern. He rode to the town and to the king's courtyard. When he came close, he dismounted from his horse Rispa and bade a man hold him and take care of his spear while he carried out his errand, and this was done for him. Then Heimir went into the hall and up to the king's high seat and greeted him. Then he went before Prince Thidrek and spoke. "Sir Thidrek, I have long heard your name and stories about you, and I have ridden far from my home to see you. I have business with you if you will test yourself and your strength. I challenge you to single combat before Bern. We shall meet there, and the one who is the better man and who is braver when he has been tested shall carry away the other's weapons." Thidrek answered angrily, and thought this man very insolent when he had spoken these words. No man had heard such words before, and no one had dared to challenge Thidrek to single combat. He didn't let him wait to go to the battle. It seemed more likely that he had done himself much harm with this speech. Thidrek sprang up and went out of the hall, and with him went Hildibrand and a great number of knights. Now it must be told that Thidrek had all of his armor brought, and it is said that one knight brought him his mail hose, another brought him the byrnie, a third the shield. It was large and hard, and red as blood with a lion device. The fourth brought his helmet Hildegrim, and he was armed with his sword Nagelring. The fifth knight brought his horse, and the sixth saddled him. The seventh brought him his spear, and the eighth held his stirrup, and this was Hildibrand, his foster father. Now Thidrek rode with Hildibrand and many other knights out of Bern. There he found Heimir before him, and he was ready for the battle. Each turned his horse and rode most valiantly, each putting a spear in the other's shield. Neither of the spears stuck in the shield. Then each turned his horse and rode at the other, and it happened as before. Each rode at the other the third time, most bravely, and each one wanted to harm the other. And Heimir put his spear into Thidrek's shield, so that it went through under his hand, and struck the byrnie, but it did not pierce it. Then Thidrek put his spear into Heimir's shield, and into his double byrnie, and it came out of his side, so that Heimir was somewhat wounded. They had ridden together so hard that Thidrek's horse almost fell on his hind feet, so that his feet almost reached the ground. But Thidrek was so strong that he did not leave the saddle, and between them they broke both spear shafts, and in this fashion they ended their tournament. Now they dismounted from their horses and drew their swords. Then they met and fought both long and valiantly, and neither retreated before the other. And now Heimir struck at Thidrek's helmet Hildegrim with his sword Blodgang, and from this blow the sword broke into two pieces just past the hilt. Now he was weaponless, and he gave himself into Prince Thidrek's power. Thidrek did not wish to kill him, and accepted him as a vassal, and they became the best of friends. Thidrek rode back into Bern, and his name had gained much new fame. And thus The 6th part of the Thidrekssaga is already at its end. In the next part, we will witness the many kings of Hunaland, King Milias of Hunaland, and a bribery that would end up taking many lives. Thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here at Sagenheim.